Welcome to the Rabbi and the Shrink. This is Dr. Margarita Gurri, the Shrink, and here's my favorite rabbi,
Yonason Goldson.
And the good rabbi and I are delighted to have with us Lucille Ossai. Welcome.
Hello.
Well, we're excited because your main topic is about boosting influence and generating results with effective communication. Let me do a little bragging about you before you say much more, though. I think it's remarkable that you're a global guru for communication. You have an award-winning book, Influence and Thrive. How professionals, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and corporations use effective communication to get results. Everyone wants to stay tuned and learn how to do that. And you have a top communication blog. It's award-winning, Rethinking Business Communications. Welcome. So tell us about how to thrive then.
Ooh. Well, the good news, Margarita, is that it's simple, but it takes work. Yeah. And the very first thing I would say is to put yourself in the shoes of your audience, find out what is important to them, and then tailor your communication in a way that appeals to their needs. Bottom line, it's all about authentic connection with your audience. And then from there, you could achieve great things in a nutshell.
You remind me that someone explained the difference between simple and easy. And so push-ups are simple. Just go up, go down. But they are not easy for most of us. And when you can find a process, what you're describing is something that really is simple, then we can focus our efforts and get better at it. And eventually it will become easier, won't it?
It will, as time goes on, if you commit to the arts and the crafts. Because
so where do we
communication
start?
Is an art. Exactly.
Where do we start, Lucille? Let's say I think I'm a great communicator, but I'm not. Like, for instance, I just interrupted you. So let's say we're not great communicators, but we think we are, or we don't think we are, but we are. So where do we start?
By just checking the different types of communication. So we are doing this virtually, yeah? Because you're based in the United States, I'm based in Nigeria and West Africa. So it's the little things, just trying to take note of my body language, for example. Do I seem engaged? Do I seem interested, or am I just biding the time or waiting for the time to pass by? You know, and am I maintaining eye contact, which I hope I'm doing? Am I giving you the attention that you deserve? Am I listening actively? So these are little things that we can do, especially in virtual communication. Then in face-to-face communication is also taking note of the body language, but also the choice of words that someone uses, the pace, the rhythm, and just being what I'll call aware. So you should have a great sense of awareness, so situational awareness, and be quite sensitive to the vibes the other person is giving. And then you would be able to know, just ask clarifying questions. Oh, I understand this. Oh, I would like to understand your point of view. Or did you say this, or am I way off? Or could you explain a bit more? Because what you're saying is really interesting. I would like to learn. That really opens you up to receiving the best of the other person. So just little things that we tend to also pick up along the way, I say would help.
In my keynotes, I sometimes reference my college psychology professor, who used to say that if you listen to people talk, and it used to be easier to do this if we travel by train or bus or plane, and you'd sit in the and you listen to people behind you or around you. It's harder to do that now because everybody's talking into little devices, so you can only hear one side of the conversation. But when you listen to people talk, you often hear that they're not actually talking to each other. They're talking at each other. He called it dialogues of the deaf. Because one person is talking, and then he stops, and usually to breathe, and the other person jumps in, and she talks and talks and talks, not responding to anything he said. And then she has to come up for air, and he jumps back in, picks up where he left off as if nothing happened, and they just keep leapfrogging over each other. Right? So what you're describing, the authenticity is to take a real interest
Yes.
in the other person. I want to hear what you have to say. Many people do have something worthwhile to say, and not just be thinking about what I'm going to say in response.
Yes. Absolutely. And I found that because I'm an introvert. I know some people tend to be shocked, especially because I do lectures at a business school and so on and so forth. But I think that is one of the quickest ways to connect with somebody. And it takes the pressure off you of trying to be smart or knowledgeable. If you develop a genuine interest in what the other person wants to say and the point of view, it just releases you, I think, releases you to really be focused on what it is you're going to learn and empowers the other person to be free with you. So you then get that authentic, just like you highlighted, that authentic connection. So absolutely, Yonason, I think that's spot on. Really good example.
In your book, I took a sneak peek at some of your book stuff that you have online on your website, which is really cool because it's just your name, Lucille, Lucille, Ossai, OSSAI.com. I see. I'm learning how to say your name. And one of the things I was struck with is your first two chapters. One is fake it until you become it, and the other is inauthentic body language. So it's kind of a category busters. If you wouldn't mind addressing both, because I think that's kind of what we are addressing here: how to be authentic or inauthentic awareness.
Okay, so those two, should I say, different thoughts.
They're very different thoughts.
They're very different, yeah. But in a
Yes.
way, they're similar. They're not original to me. So I wasn't the one that came up with them. But when I came across the research and I read a couple of things about them, it just made sense. So the first one was attributed to Amy Cuddy. And she gave this fantastic viral TED talk about your body language, how your body language triggers certain behaviors in you and makes you feel confident and so on and so forth. And her premise was that even if you don't feel confident, if you adopt certain body language poses, it sort of triggers something in your brain that makes you feel confident, and then you begin to basically communicate in that newfound confidence, and you'll be able to connect better, in a nutshell. So basically, your body language can trigger the behaviors that you want, which will make you feel confident and make others perceive you to be confident. So that was really, really interesting. And then the second premise was by Matt Baldwin, who incidentally wrote the foreword for my book. Matt Baldwin is an expert in body language and a really, really great guy. And his TED talk was focused on the fact that you need to be able to trigger a certain category to get the results that you want, to be able to influence people and to be able to connect better. And in order to trigger that friend category, you deliberately have to put on certain body language cues that make you out to be perceived as friendly and approachable and as credible. Yeah, so in a way, you choose the body language that you want to display on purpose to trigger a positive perception of you and your person and your credibility. And that in turn leads you to more authentic connections that you otherwise would not have had if you just depended on your natural instincts or your natural way of interacting with people. So fascinating stuff.
That is. The rabbi and I were talking right before about the misperception many people have about authenticity.
Yes.
And then I was reminded of a quote my father always said: "It is authentic to burp at the dinner table, but in this family, we do not." And I think that people think, well, I feel it, I think it, so I'm just going to say it and do it. And I don't think that that's what authenticity is about.
No, absolutely. And the way I explained it also on another podcast is that we are different versions of ourselves. I don't know if that makes sense. We're just more than one person. So the way I might be on this podcast might be different from the way I would be with my family, which would in turn be different from the way I would conduct myself in a business meeting or in a pitch. So it's really not about being untrue to yourself. You just choose the aspects of yourself and put your best foot forward and choose the aspect that will be appropriate for that particular situation.
Well said.
You know,
Well said.
I really like that
I
idea.
just think
In other words,
how it's-
authenticity is or should be aspirational. As I have a
Right.
vision of myself, what I would like to be, what I am working towards becoming. And even if I'm not there yet, it doesn't make me inauthentic to work on presenting myself that way, because it's that work that's actually going to transform me into that person that I want to become.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially if you are keen on self-development, on growth. Yeah, if you have that growth mindset, just like I do, then you are open to learning new things, to refine your craft, to connect better with people. My line of work is all about communication. So I'm constantly learning and trying to tweak, to hone, and to apply new things and discard things that don't work. So you have to have an open mind, and you have to be willing to learn and to appreciate that there may be things that you might not know that other people might know. And you're like, oh, that's really, really nice. That's a nice technique. That's a nice thought. I'm going to incorporate that and see whether it works. And guess what? It might work. It might not work. But if it works, it probably works better than what you were doing. And that's something new that you've learned. So absolutely. I think it's also rooted in having a growth mindset and wanting to always be best and wanting to improve yourself as you go along.
So what are your roots that set you on this course? How did you get passionate about this?
Believe it or not, I stumbled, if I use that word, stumbled into this field. Yeah. A couple of years ago, after my first job, I resigned a couple of years or many years ago now. And I was a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years. And I just kept on noticing things were not right. People were not doing things right. You know, I would listen to a speech by a respected person. I'm like, that's not quite right. That wasn't right. Or I would read about an article about a scandal or something. I'm like, no, they should have communicated that. And then one day I just decided, you know, just some inner prompting. I just decided to start writing, and I literally started. I had a BlackBerry device. I don't know if you remember what those are, but I had a BlackBerry device, and then I just started writing my thoughts on my BlackBerry. And believe it or not, the scene was at my local Catholic church. So Margarita, I know you told me you're a Catholic, yes? So I had dropped off my son for catechism lessons, and I was bored, and I was like, what do I do? And I just started writing on my BlackBerry, you know. And then I just thought, this is really interesting. I got really engrossed in it, got back home, just started the blog, and then started blogging. And what I found out was that the more I blogged, the more curious I became about communication, and the more passionate I became. And it just built on from there, And then fast forward a couple of years later, I was able to deliver a training for a small consulting company in Lagos, Nigeria, because somebody had read one of my blog articles and recommended me. And that was how it just took off from there. And then I landed a job as a communications coach at the Lagos Business School. And then it just snowballed, and I became really obsessed as years went by. But it wasn't something that I planned. It was just something that, what's the word, happened, like you say, organically. It just something that just happened naturally. I just developed this interest and found out that it was something I wanted to do.
That's marvelous.
That was it.
That's absolutely marvelous. Well, one of the questions we always ask is, what made you start writing it down? So we know that you had the courage and the idea and things were bothering you, but what made you decide to just go for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I didn't really plan it, especially the blog. I didn't plan it, but I had been reading and noticing a lot of things that I thought needed to change. And I just thought I just needed to put something down to explore. It's actually even started from the desire to explore this whole world of communications better. Yeah, that was just it. So my thoughts were just, okay, this is what I think, this is what I know. And I started interacting, I started becoming really aware of different things. And because I had worked previously before that, I'd worked for about 4 years, I had quite a lot of instances. I was like, oh yeah, this is what happened when I was writing this, when I was communicating with that. And I started asking questions. My husband would tell me his tales of woe from work, you know, so all these things I just kept on just thinking about all those things and kept on exploring. And then the more I wrote, the more I began to explore. I started reading a lot, I started connecting with people, and then the passion just came. So the passion came when I started, not necessarily before I started. It's weird. It's almost like a reverse of what usually happens. And yeah, I just found that writing was just a very good way of sharing insights and learning and interacting with people. And writing is still a really big part of my work. The blog continues, you know, even after 10 years. I've been blogging every month for 10 years now.
Your blog is beautiful.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
well written, thought-provoking, and practical. I thought it was
Thank
very
you.
well done.
And I love your
you.
story, Lucille, because, you know, we hear often that you need to start with the end in mind. You have to have the destination in mind. And that's great if you have a destination. But sometimes we really don't know where we want to go or where we ought to go or where we are going. And to have that kind of courage of curiosity.
Absolutely.
And inquisitive. Yeah. I mean, just write. The process of writing can be so revelatory because we actually give ourselves the opportunity to follow our ideas and to explore and put ourselves in new situations. I mean, I graduated college. What do you do with a degree in English? I went hitchhiking cross country, and I don't necessarily recommend that, but it's on a course that led me to a life that I never would have imagined if I hadn't taken that step of discovery.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And let's look at the ethics of that self-exploration for both of you. I mean, this is a podcast about issues that have to do with ethics. And you know, the courage of curiosity, you know, the C, you know, Rabbi, why don't you do our ethics? What does ethics stand for?
Yeah, so the E is empathy. You have to be able to relate to people and anticipate their feelings. The T is trust. You have to cultivate that relationship where you trust and are trustworthy. The H is humility, because you mentioned earlier, you're always learning. We all should be always learning because there's always more for us to know, and we can learn from everyone. The I is inquisitiveness. We didn't use it for this curiosity because the C is for courage. Those often go hand in hand. And then the S is self-discipline, because it's not a check, it's not a list to check off the boxes, it's a process. And we have to continuously go through it again and again.
I think basically that is all what effective communication entails. I really like that, because could you run through again? Empathy, trust, inquisitiveness.
Humility is the H.
I'm going to put it in the chat for you.
Yes, please
I'll
do.
put it
Humility
in the chat.
and all that. I think that's a really good way to connect with people and to develop that bond rather quickly. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. I wrote it up in an article for Fast Company. And you know, I think it's something that we all need to refer back to.
Yeah.
Because these are all critical components, and if we overlook any of them, we're going to end up stumbling somewhere.
Well, and I think that that's what you did, because you were curious and had the courage of your convictions to follow your curiosity without the security of an alleged endpoint. I think you've been able to do marvelous things for yourself and others. I salute you. I think it's really wonderful.
Thank you very much. Further down the line, I did get employed and all that, but that just really helped. The writing and everything just really helped. And it's still really helping me as well, because I still learn new things. And that's the great thing about communication, is that it's really broad. And if you're open, you learn, you continue to learn. So,
well, we look forward to hearing more about your different books and different blogs as well.
Different books?
Yes, I foresee other books with an S.
Okay.
Yes, I can see you doing that. So what are the top mistakes, the barriers to this effective communication?
Okay.
Help clue us in. What do we need to watch out for?
Okay, so prior to the pandemic, I wouldn't really have brought this up, but the pandemic really brought this to the fore. I would say cultural awareness, extremely important. Yeah, because now people are collaborating across regions. We're having this fantastic conversation from different locations and all that. So being sensitive to the fact that the way you might view things, even the way you might communicate certain things might be different from the other party, and knowing how to be a bit sensitive and how to be professional and accommodating enough. And then if you are going to be visiting a foreign country or you're going to be doing business as well, just taking that extra time to inquire what is appropriate, how you should conduct yourself, how you should talk, how you should connect would go a really long way, because there are a lot of mistakes that people make because they just don't know the culture of the land or the communication style of the people that they're interacting with. So I would say cultural awareness. And the two, and I think that really comes in the H of your ethics, humility. Just being open and being humble and willing to admit that you don't know everything, even if you're a leader, because that is the best way you would be able to coax people to really share their ideas without fear of retribution or rebuttals and so on and so forth. A great leader and should be a great communicator that makes it easy for people to contribute their ideas. So that would also mean a change in leadership as well, a change in leadership. So gone are the days when, the CEO, the head made all the decisions. Now, the smart leader knows that he has to be collaborative, and his role is basically to steer actions and attitudes towards achieving a common goal, towards achieving the vision for the company. And you cannot do that if you're not humble, if you're not open, and if you're not willing to learn. So that's number two. And then number three is I don't think this gets and I'm thinking about it, I don't think this gets enough attention, but I think also making people feel appreciated. If they've done something good, if they've made a good suggestion, just giving them recognition. I think that is really important. And sometimes it's just the little things. Oh, Margarita had this fantastic idea, and because of her, great involvement, and because she was able to do this, our company was able to do this. We really appreciate your hard work, Margarita. Please keep us in the loop on how things are going. Or Yonason, I really appreciate you calling me aside and explaining a couple of things that you feel that we ought to consider that we hadn't considered before. So all those little bits of recognition really, really help to increase trust. That's why when you came up with the ethics, I looked at it, I was like, this is brilliant. This basically is what effective communication should be: empathetic, it should be, open and, inquisitive, and so on and so forth. So I think those are the three. And then just being very mindful of the body language as well. I became very, very appreciative of the power of body language when I started researching for my book and writing, because I have a whole section on body language. And I learned from the experts. And the more I was exposed to their work and to common sense based on mistakes that I have made as well, the more appreciative I became of how important it is that you exude the right body language, either, the tone of voice, the way you address, the eye contact, your gestures, all these things matter, and all these things create a perception of you. And sometimes it's as swift as a couple of seconds. So if we're able to keep all these things in mind, I think that would really help.
You just gave us
that's useful.
You gave us a whole lot to unpack right there. But your first point about the mindfulness and the awareness, Socrates says you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And just being aware that when I'm engaging someone else, there may be cultural differences that I just don't know about. There may be personal preferences that I don't know about. And I don't even know to ask the questions. So there has to be kind of a reciprocity there. There has to be a mutual respect that if someone violates my boundaries, I'm willing to presume positive intent. I'm willing to give people, you know, a certain amount of grace to make mistakes. And then we have to be willing to be instructed. So for instance, somebody just pointed something out to me the other day, that when we talk on Zoom, many of us have this problem that it's very difficult to look in the camera while we're talking to people on the screen, because we want to relate to people by their facial expressions and their body languages, but we also want them to feel like we are talking to them and not talking to other parts of their body. And it was pointed out to me that on a regular screen, if I'm looking at the middle of the screen, so the woman I'm talking to is going to think I'm looking at a different part of her anatomy. And of course, I'm not. And I don't, but we're projecting something because we have trouble dealing with the technology. And so a simple fix for that I started using is I move my screen up so that it's just a strip closer to my camera. And the space between looking at the face of the person I'm talking to, you right now, and looking at the camera is minimal. And that just creates an impression that is a truer representation of the communication we're having. But until somebody pointed that out to me, it never would have occurred to me.
Exactly. And if the person made that suggestion and you were a bit defensive, the person would not be comfortable making similar suggestions down the line. You know, and I really like what you said, because I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and sometimes I get messages. And that's why I put the cultural thing as #1. And some messages I get are quite inappropriate, but then I try not to take a lot of offense, because it's not that they've used bad language, it's just the tone is a little bit off. You know, so I give the benefit of the doubt. So I've actually sort of taken a step back to say, okay, let me just assume that this person has, like you said, positive intent. And I try not to get irritated easily. I'm like, oh, and then sometimes, you know, along the way, you know, the person corrects, you know, the style or the tone, and I figure, that's fine, you know, and all those things. So I think just being a bit empathetic and just realizing that the way sometimes people communicate will be different, and just giving them that opportunity, at least in the first few instances, to get to know you a little bit better and all that. And then you can decide, is this a relationship? Is this a business association or a relationship I want to cultivate? Or I still don't feel comfortable because I've, you know, communicated with this person X number of times and I'm feeling really uncomfortable, but at least you've given the person the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And I think that is what is lacking sometimes in professional communication and all that, because styles are different. Sometimes people speak English and English is not their first language. So they come across as very abrupt and very direct, which might be a bit like, whoa, but just give them a bit of time. You know, give them a bit of time and just see how it goes. Otherwise, you'll find that you know, you are missing out on potentially great relationships and associations and collaborations down the line. So I think that is really important.
So every misunderstanding really is an opportunity to build trust and an atmosphere for curiosity and exchange of ideas. So I think that's exciting.
Absolutely.
Well, Rabbi, I think it's time for the word from the day. And when we come back, we'd like to hear about Lucille's next adventures. We've gotten, maybe this was your takeaway. Maybe you have also another takeaway for our audience, because they all really need you, especially now as we're still in the Zoom thumbnail world, but also we're beginning to do more and more out in the open. The Rabbi and I just met for the first time 2 weeks ago.
Really?
For real, yeah.
After a
Wow.
year and a half of being co-host.
Yeah, we've been co-hosts for a long time, but we've
Right.
never really met. And one thing that was hard for me is I'm Cuban, right? And we're very touchy and we're close. And he's a rabbi. I'm not supposed to touch him unless I'm his wife, right? So
Right.
I look like I was having, some sort of reflex issue. So that's something. So it's been interesting. A lot of my other friends that we met were so used to the square that we did this. Oh, hi, that's you. Yeah. So, all right. So, Rabbi, word of the day, please, sir.
Word of the day, I think, is a perfect fit for our guest of the day. And the word is euphony.
Ooh.
Euphony, which means agreeableness of sound, a pleasing effect to the ear.
Oh, it sounds like that.
It does, right? Euphonic.
Yeah.
It
Right?
does. It's like a river, like euphony.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's
a river.
especially a pleasant sounding or harmonious combination or succession of words. And when
Interesting.
we are thoughtful about our choice of words,
Mhm.
that people respond to the message better
Yes.
when we package it well. It's not enough to have good content. We have to have a certain style. We have to have a certain sense of expression. There has to be that authenticity. People have to believe that I really mean what I say,
Mhm.
that I have developed the idea in a thoughtful way, that I'm articulating it in a way that really brings out the substance and the essence. And then you get that kind of harmonic or euphonic response. I'm drawn to the message because it's been presented to me from a source that's pleasant, that's credible, and in a manner that's easy for me to receive. The sages say that you have to phrase in a way that will be heard. It's not enough to be right.
Mhm.
It's not enough to be wise. There's a way of communicating the message so that the person on the other side will be able to accept it, receive it, and digest it. And I think you are a wonderful example for us.
I think
Lucille,
so.
Thank you. Thank
How to
you.
do that.
Thank
Very
you. I
much. And
appreciate
you're
that.
teaching that as well, which is lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. What a great choice of words. Very
Sometimes
cool.
it's easy.
Unusual. I don't
Yeah,
think I've heard it.
euphony.
I don't think I've heard that word before.
I've never heard it before, but I like it a
Yeah.
lot. It
Yes.
makes me think of all the times we smile when someone's speaking.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't even know how harmonious what they're saying is or how pleasant until we see our mood changing, how it
Mhm.
impacts others.
Yeah.
It's truly a gift.
There's
So-
just an interesting bit of, Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech. So many of us have heard that segment is about 2/3 of the way into the speech,
Oh, yes.
and that he had a scripted speech that he departed from.
Yeah.
And that section was extemporaneous. But what I only learned recently
Mhm.
is that the first part of the speech apparently did not go well. It was not
Yeah.
particularly well received.
Mhm.
And somebody who knew him in the audience picked up on that and shouted up, "Tell them your dream."
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that prompt steered him to spontaneously giving one of the most famous and compelling speeches in history, because he gave himself permission to be himself.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
he set the atmosphere for trust, like what Lucille is talking about. So someone could set him straight. That's really cool.
Yes. So you can imagine if he ignored that advice, that piece of advice, because with a huge crowd and somebody is just saying, "Tell them about your speech." And he was like,
"No, I have a script I have to
I have
follow."
a script. Yeah, I have a script. I have everything planned and rehearsed.
And we may
So,
not
yeah.
be talking about him today then.
Exactly.
That was
Exactly.
quite, well, with him, we would have. His message would have been heard another way. I have faith. So how about takeaways and then some adventures you're looking forward to?
Well, the takeaway, especially it's something that I've, it's something I advise and I've come to realize in the course of my work is that it doesn't really matter whether you have a natural talent for speaking or for writing. Yeah, effective communication is a skill you can learn. You just have to be willing to do the work, to be open and open to the different techniques, and to have basically an open mindset and a curious mind, and to dedicate the time to refine and hone the craft. Really, really important, because it's a skill that keeps on improving the more you keep on exercising the muscle. So I think that is the key takeaway. Excited? No, well, this is really epic, but just try to follow through on the personal goals that I have for my my business and basically my craft, and hopefully to just appear on more stages this year, and to try to take some time out for myself as well, to just try to relax and not to worry so much, not to worry so much, because I tend to be a worrier if I make that term. So just to take things in the stride, and always realize that no matter what I'm going through, it could be worse. It might sound a bit pessimistic, but it's a bit of a comfort. You would overcome this. You would get through this. It could be worse. So, there's still time. There's still time, and there's still hope to work towards something better. So, those are the two key things. Nothing epic like climbing a mountain or going across the world, but. Yeah.
Is there something fun or funny or totally not work related that you're excited about or looking forward to?
That's a really good question. I've not actually sat down to think about it.
We started asking it because we found that many of our leaders are not taking care of themselves. So that's why we started asking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really, I've just realized that it's not something I've thought about. Oh, this is mundane, but basically to watch more great films. Yeah. So there are two films that are coming up that I'm really looking forward to. The Wakanda film. The Wakanda film, the Black
I
Panther.
love that.
I'm really looking forward to. I was just telling my husband yesterday, because I saw the trailer and I was getting a bit emotional. I was like, I've got to watch this film. I haven't been to the cinema this year, but I have to see that film. So yeah, that one. And then there's another one, also because it's finally beginning to open the door for more light to shine on African culture, and especially the females, to feel strong female, African female leaders and all that. So that's the second film by, I think, Viola Davis. The Woman King, I think that's what it's called. So those are the two things I'm really looking forward to.
Is it the Girl King or the Woman King?
I think is it the Woman King?
I don't remember. I'm gonna look it up real fast.
Yeah, I think it's the Woman King. So those two films I'm really looking forward to. So just unwind. Going to the cinema used to be one of those things that I treasured. I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't go out much, but going to the cinema used to be a very good pastime. And then COVID hit, and then, I haven't really gotten back to this. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that's really interesting, because if you hadn't asked, I wouldn't really have sat down to say, okay, this is what so that's really.
The doctor's very
really
good at asking questions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rabbi.
Makes you really think.
I'm
So,
doing
yeah,
the
so-
grandma thing. The rabbi and I want everyone who's contributing to take care of themselves so that they
Yep.
can benefit people for a long time, but also themselves. So we've seen
Yeah.
a lot of burned out leaders doing good all around the world. And we decided to take that on as a task,
Yeah, you're doing a fantastic. It makes us basically put things in perspective. So
It
yes, I
does.
need to do. Yeah, there has to be life outside work.
Especially with someone like
Yeah.
you, since you're a thinker. So I
Mhm.
bet you when you're off doing nothing,
Mhm.
you're going to have eventually so many aha moments and thoughts and ideas and noticing that
Mhm.
will feed you your business tenfold.
I
So-
believe so. Yes,
I think
so.
doing nothing or
Yes.
fun or silly things,
Yeah.
like I'm learning
Yeah.
how to juggle.
I'm
I'm terrible. I'm down to juggling 2 balls. That's good. That's the best I've got. Give me another week, 9 months, whatever it takes. I will learn to juggle. That's a silly task. Rabbi, do you have a silly thing you're working on,
Do I have a silly thing I'm working on?
or a fun thing that is not like serious work?
Well, my wife and I just took a 3.5-week vacation in Israel. And I gave myself permission to pretty much unplug, spend a lot less time online, and didn't worry about it.
That was great. And yet you created your street sign videos, mini videos.
Yeah, no, in other words, I love what I do. I love to create content. And I don't, I could do that all day, every day, and be very fulfilled. But as you say, we do need to distract ourselves, because that gives the brain a way of settling, of refocusing, and of making connections and seeing things that we wouldn't notice otherwise. So having time to just change the rhythm of our lives really will help us in all of our goals.
Absolutely.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Lucille Ossai, you have been such a treat to have on. We're just delighted that you said yes when we asked you to come on. And I know that our audience is excited to go to your website and check out what you have and read your book and look at your award-winning blogs as well. You have a lot to share, and can't wait to see what you learned from those 2 movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I may blog about it as well, because I know the lessons that would resonate with me. So yes.
I see a blog in your future on that.
Well, thanks so much.
Well,
for
everyone,
joining us.
thank you for tuning in. Rabbi, did you have a final word, sir?
No, doctor, it's the final word is yours.
The final word. My final words are, we thank the euphemic Lucille Ossai. And may everyone take the time from these 3 introverts, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, the process of finding out where we are by writing is something we all recommend. So we'll see you at the next episode of The Rabbi and the Shrink, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for listening to The Rabbi and the Shrink, Everyday Ethics Unscripted. To book Dr. Redshoe, Dr. Margarita Gurri, or Rabbi Yonason Goldson as speakers or advisors for your organization, contact them at therabbiandtheshrink.com. This has been a Dr. Redshoe production.